You're 10.
Hey. Thank you. Welcome to Live at from Hal's house. With my apologies to Darren John Hall of Hall & Oates. Live from Hal's house. This is our monthly meeting of the Friends of the Constitution in Greater West Roxbury, Boston. And tonight's special guest is Michael King of the Massachusetts Family Institute. I'm not going to give a long biographical sketch, just to say that his organization is doing an incredible job. And he's going to be giving a presentation for about 20-25 minutes entitled Engage Massachusetts. So let's give him a nice warm hand.
Yay!
And you should do it from there, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Massachusetts Family Institute's main mission is to strengthen and protect the family. We believe that as the family goes, so goes society, and I think you guys would probably agree with that. And I think in our society we've seen a lot of unfortunate things happening to the family, and a lot of liberal, progressive policies in our state house, curriculums in our public schools that we will be going over a little bit tonight through this PowerPoint presentation. So my family could not make it, but I brought them with me. So here's my lovely family. I have actually 6 kids, so why you don't see 2 of them there, because we just are in the process of adopting a 5-year-old girl, and my wife is pregnant, about 4 months pregnant, so that's number 6. But I want to tell you tonight about several issues that we're dealing with, but first I thought we'd start with the Constitution of Massachusetts, seeing as this is the Camp Constitution Director's home. And what I want to point out in this is that sometimes we think in Massachusetts that God is not in our Constitution. You'd think that by some of our laws, right? Okay. But if you look to our Constitution, you'll see many points in there, and I'll highlight some of them. The supreme being, the creator and preserver, worshiping God, these were all, as I'm sure you all know, tenets of the founders, even in Massachusetts, acknowledging God. So everything has changed, but really nothing has changed. And I think sometimes it feels that way, right? That it seems like everything has changed, but really, when you look at our Constitution, nothing has changed. God has always been in our Constitution. This is our, as I mentioned, our mission, strengthening the family, the Judeo-Christian values upon which the family is based. And Massachusetts Family Institute is one of 40 institutes in the United States. We are a local affiliate of Focus on the Family. If you've heard of Focus on the Family, Dr. James Dobson. We are the public policy arm of Focus on the Family. So we look out for all the legislation. There's about 6,000 pieces of legislation that are offered every 2 years at the State House. So you obviously couldn't go through all of that legislation, so we go through it for you. And we look at the things that we believe are the most concerning to the family in particular. And these are just some different alliances. Alliance Defending Freedom, the A in the left-hand corner there. They are a group of pro bono Christian attorneys that will represent, for example, they represented 4 churches in Massachusetts recently that had sued the Attorney General in the bathroom bill debacle, where churches were considered public accommodations. And so if a man identifying as a female went into my daughter's bathroom in a church, and I went in there as a parent and I was concerned about her privacy, let's say, I could have been sued up to $50,000 for discrimination, or even sent to jail for up to 1 year for discrimination. So Alliance Defending Freedom, they had represented 4 churches. Again, they sued the Attorney General, Maura Healey, and before they went to court, as of December 16th, she dropped the case, and churches are no longer considered public accommodation.
Excellent.
In Massachusetts, yes. That is worthy of a clap.
And a few huzzahs, too, huh?
Huzzah!
Because if you don't stand up for your religious liberties, you will lose them. And we saw that firsthand in Massachusetts. So I'm just going to kind of go rapid fire through these slides here, but we deal with 3 main issues, okay? The sanctity of life, natural marriage, and religious liberty. And we'll cover most of those today. We also do a lot of research. We put out a report about fatherlessness in Massachusetts and what kind of effect fatherlessness homes. We know in some demographics up to 72% of families or kids are growing up in a single parent family. In some other demographics it's as high as 50%, but I think the average is about 40% of kids growing up in single parent families. So what kind of effect does that have on a society, both from a social point of view but also from a financial point of view? So that can be downloaded from our website, but it's a very helpful tool to educate people. And then we do a lot of briefs that I'll be passing out later tonight as well. But we take these laws and we put them into a one-page brief so that anyone can understand really what the law has to say about these concerning issues. So you can see here, you might have remembered Justina Pelletier, her case with DCF when they took her out of the home because the parents didn't agree with the Boston Children's Hospital's diagnosis, and DCF thought that was a violation of being, an appropriate parent, and so Justina was pulled from the house, and there was a whole debate over the role of DCF in the state when it came to the family. So those are definitely kinds of cases that we will take on. So we advocate. Many times you might see us on television giving opinions about from a Christian worldview, and then protecting your ministry. This is something we offer for churches in particular, especially for instance the bathroom bill where your religious liberties were under attack. ADF, who puts this together, they have a $50 million budget, and they have plenty of attorneys that can come. So if you ever come across, there's an issue right now in a woman's shelter in Springfield where a female identifying as a male identifying as a female went into a women's shelter in Springfield, and they would not serve the person because they were obviously a male. And so now the male is suing the women's shelter. Okay, now do you think a women's shelter can afford to be sued? Of course not. Right. Yeah. But this is one of the cases probably that ADF will next be representing in Massachusetts. So very concerning things going on. But these are the three areas that we're never supposed to talk about in public, and we talk about all three many times at the same time. So we violate all kinds of PC rules. One of the things we point out, just as an example in terms of where our culture is, here's a very famous verse from Jesus. Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, a reference to Genesis 1:27, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let not man separate. And we can see in three different areas how, I'm going to go through this. Sometimes we do this at a Spanish church, so let me just get through this for a second. Unless you understand Spanish. Oh, I guess I don't have the English. But what this is basically saying is, this is no-fault divorce at the bottom. I didn't put the English part in here, but you can see how our culture has unglued.
What's homosexual dad?
Yeah, do you know what that is?
Homosexuality.
Homosexuality.
Oh.
In Spanish.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but we've basically taken the three parts of that verse, and you can see how no-fault divorce, homosexuality, and now we're dealing with the transgender, have violated all three parts of that verse in Matthew. And then I won't go over this whole thing, but this is the timeline of the same-sex marriage back in 2004 when we redefined marriage between a man and a woman, and then how far we've come now into the transgender age. Where it took probably a decade or so to redefine marriage. It hasn't taken that long to redefine what is male and what is female. So it seems like exponentially the time frame has shortened. We can see here too, May 9, 2012, if you remember when the White House lit up in all colors back in 2012 when Obama endorsed same-sex marriage. And then February 11, 2013, the military extends the some marriage benefits to same-sex partners. And then June 26, 2013, Supreme Court finds key part of the DOMA unconstitutional. So we can see kind of the wall starting to come down here. And then this was kind of the shot heard around the world in June 26, 2015. U.S. Supreme Court makes gay marriage legal in all 50 states. So, and then of course after that dealing, like I said, with
That's a very short span.
yeah, very short span, absolutely. So the moral revolution, we talked about this earlier at dinner. You know what? How did we get to this place since the 60s and 70s? How has all of this exponentially seemed to have gotten to the place where it's at? Well, what was condemned has to be celebrated, not just tolerated. What was celebrated is condemned, and those who refuse to celebrate are condemned. And we clearly see that in our society. So what is next? Several things. But first, we'll talk a little bit about recreational marijuana. Back in November, of course, you know that the state of Massachusetts voted to accept recreational marijuana. As you probably know, we already had medical marijuana okayed in Massachusetts. We already had that you could hold an ounce and not go to jail, but you could be fined. So we already had these two components of marijuana legalized. But now we have this thing called recreational marijuana. And you can see this was the vote in Boston of the yeses versus the nos, but there were 90 towns and cities out of the 351 towns and cities that actually voted against recreational marijuana. And many may not know, and this is very important, that any town and city, whether you voted for marijuana or against it, you can still opt out of recreational marijuana. And we have a whole action plan that if you want to go to your town selectman or your city council and say, hey, this is how you opt out, it's based on what the town of Westboro just did to opt out of recreational marijuana. They did a three-prong approach, and I can get more into that afterwards, but just the important thing is that people know that you can opt out of recreational marijuana. Now in Colorado, when they voted on recreational marijuana, it was you had to opt in, okay? And then the industry kind of got smart because only I think maybe 25% of counties actually opted in after the vote. In Massachusetts, you have to opt out, okay? So even though those 90 towns and cities voted against it, okay, because the state in general voted for it, all those 90 towns and cities are now automatically opted in. Now you have to go through all the rigorum to opt out. So definitely a play by the industry that's not in the interest, of course, of especially our children. The law allows local control over marijuana in three general ways. You can impose a local sales tax up to 2%. Prohibit the sale of marijuana for consumption where sold, okay, and also impose ordinances and bylaws regulating and even prohibiting cultivation, processing, distribution, and the sale of marijuana for recreational use. Did you know that one plant, so you can grow up to 12 plants, 6 plants per adult, no more than 12 plants in a home, okay? So even though you can opt out of retail shops, you can't opt out of people growing it in their homes. And I've heard that one plant is worth anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000 per plant, and there could be 2 to 3 harvests per year. So if you do the math, and you're looking for a supplemental income, it's anywhere from, you know, if it's $1,000 a plant, you're talking 12 grand. If it's $5 a plant, you're talking 60 grand. And then if you have 2 or 3 harvests a year, you're talking 180 grand tops. I was looking at this thing in Georgetown. They were hiring a grower. Take a guess how much they were offering on the salary for the grower.
$500,000.
Close. $325,000 to grow marijuana in Georgetown. So you don't think this is a money play? This is a complete money play and does not take into consideration especially our kids. In Colorado, there's more pot shops than there are McDonald's and Starbucks combined. So the prevalence, if you think this is going to be, you know, carefully licensed, well, just take a look at Colorado and see how many opportunities there are to grow marijuana. And I believe that it's just 25% of the counties or towns and cities in Colorado have opted in. Okay, so imagine if more counties in Colorado opted in, how much bigger this number would be. So definitely something to know going into what's coming down the pike in Massachusetts, and all the more reason that we should be very aggressive in going to our town selectmen and to our city council and saying, listen, we don't want pot shops in West Roxbury or wherever we're at. There are 5 marijuana markets, the medical market, the recreational market, the homegrown we talked about market, the caregiver market. We also have the black market we talked about, where if you're growing pot in your home, you're not allowed to sell it, but you don't think that there's going to be a black market that's created when you have so much wealth that can be made in marijuana. Plus, Massachusetts being kind of the center of New England that has just kind of okayed this whole thing. You don't think New Hampshire and Maine and Connecticut are all going to want a piece, Vermont, and Massachusetts become a hub for the market. So very concerning things. These are some of the false messages when it comes to the marijuana industry. Marijuana is an all-natural wellness product, an herb that is not harmful to youth. The THC levels in marijuana are much higher than they were in the 60s and 70s. It's a much more potent drug. Marijuana is a cure-all for any discomfort. Getting high is an acceptable recreational activity for youth, and all Colorado's pot is now safe, tightly regulated, and can be used responsibly. All these are myths of the marijuana industry. You can see just by the drinks here that how much this is marketed to kids, okay? 13% of kids aged 12 to 17 in Colorado are using marijuana to some extent, okay? So 13% of ages 12 to 17. The debate in Massachusetts is what age are we going to make it where it becomes legal? Is it going to be 21? Is it going to be 25? People are really hoping that it's 25 because that's theoretically when your brain is fully developed. But it looks like it's probably going to be closer to 21, which again is a real danger to our young people in our society especially. And then we can see here the level of confidence in the evidence for adverse effects of marijuana on health and well-being. So addiction to marijuana and other substances, okay, there's a very high level of confidence in these being true, okay. Abnormal brain development. These are all big concerns. I mean, these three high ones down here: diminished lifetime achievement, motor vehicle accidents, symptoms of chronic bronchitis, lung cancer, schizophrenia. They're finding a lot of people in Colorado are in car accidents because they're stoned. So a lot of different social issues, coming to Massachusetts that we can just look to Colorado and see what's coming. The past month usage by 12 to 17-year-olds, I already talked about this. But Colorado's up there at the top, again, with about 13% of ages 12 to 17. And this is because they promote it as edibles, okay? So you might see a Swedish fish, or you might see a gummy bear, or you might see a brownie, or a chocolate chip cookie. And, there have been stories about people that eat like just a piece of a cookie. And there's so much THC in that cookie that they become stoned just from a piece of the cookie. Okay, so a lot of times people don't really know what they're getting into and what they're eating when they're eating these edibles. And then what is the number one issue in Colorado schools? Pot. That's the number one issue. So if we're concerned about our schools, if our teachers union should be pretty concerned about recreational marijuana. Okay. And then this is what I was talking about earlier. Approximately 70% of Colorado municipalities have opted out of marijuana commercialization for recreational purposes. So all these numbers from Colorado are just based on the 30% of municipalities that have actually opted in. And then this is just a chart that shows, when you legalize a drug, you increase the usage of that drug. Okay. So a lot of people will say, oh, let's not, create any kind of if we just if we legalize it, then less people will use it. You'll hear that sometimes, right? But clearly, if you look at the statistics, as you legalize a drug, it just becomes more prevalent. And we talked a little bit about this, things you can do, and if people are interested in learning how to opt out, they can definitely get in touch with Massachusetts Family Institute, and they can email me at michael@mafamily.org. Again, it's michael@mafamily.org, and I can send you all the information about how the town of Westboro set the precedent to opt out. So quickly, we'll talk a little bit about the sex ed mandate in your public school. So a lot of times we find that parents really don't know what their kids are being taught in their sex ed class. And I'll talk a little bit about this Engage book as well, but there's a whole chapter, I think it's chapter 4 in here, about sex education in our public schools. We were just at a Senate hearing at the State House, and one of the one of the things that's taught in this sex education is something having to do with, I won't go too deep into it, but it's non-microwavable saran wrap, and you can only imagine why that's in a sex education book. We had passed out saran wrap to all of the people on the committee that were voting for or against this new sex ed mandate, just to kind of have a prop to show how crazy this sex education is for our kids, and being taught this as early as 6th and 7th grade. And of course, who's behind the sex ed mandate? But look no further than Planned Parenthood. The sex ed mandate, some of the language in there is, it's called an act relative to healthy youth. That sounds awfully nice, doesn't it? Everyone wants healthy youth. Well, these are some terms that you'll find in the sex ed curriculum. Age appropriate. Well, what is age appropriate? Well, if you look at our the sex education of the transgender agenda, they're teaching our preschoolers through a curriculum called the Purple Dinosaur, or the Purple Unicorn, that your gender comes from your brain. Okay, as you get up into the middle school years and later elementary years, it's called the genderbred person. And again, that's in our book on page 133. And then again, medically accurate. Well, medically accurate could mean so many different things. They use very ambiguous terms in this curriculum that is a concern, especially to us at Massachusetts Family Institute, and that requires all students to be taught an affirmative, keyword affirmative, no longer tolerant, okay, but again, we must affirm and celebrate these lifestyles. Affirmative representation of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals, relationships, and families. There's a movie being shown in a lot of wellness classes today. It's called Love Is All You Need. And the thesis or the theme of this, you can look it up on YouTube, it has over 20 million hits. But the theme of this movie is that to imagine a world where everybody is homosexual, and it's out of the ordinary to be homosexual or to be heterosexual. And it's really pushed as a bullying movie, and that's how it makes its way into the schools. It's an anti-bully campaign. But it's all young, probably 9, 10-year-old actors. The main actor is probably like a 10-year-old blonde-haired girl, and she happens to be the heterosexual girl, and she's bullied by all the homosexuals, and it's a very, the more you watch it, you know, she, at the end of the movie, she comes to a place of wanting to commit suicide, and it's just, it's a very dark movie, but it very much is just another part of this agenda to push the LGBTQ agenda onto our kids. And if it weren't for a responsible mom in the town of Wayland, we never would have known about this movie. And they say, well, you can opt out as a parent. Well, how many parents are really paying that close of attention to all the curriculums and movies being played for their kids in the public schools? So definitely something to be concerned about.
But is there like a note that they're going to show it and then you can opt out, or do they just
Well,
show it?
they'll tell you there's supposed to be a note, but this mom, I'm telling you, she's one of the most responsible moms I know, and she didn't know anything about it until her ninth grade daughter came home and said, "Mom, you wouldn't believe what I saw in our wellness class."
So they just show it and then it's a fait accompli and it's too late.
Absolutely, yeah. And a lot of students, there's so much peer pressure that they don't want to be the odd person out, so they're not going to go home and tell mom and dad because they don't want to make us think about it.
And because they're bullied for
That's right.
opposing this. Yeah.
That's right,
Yeah.
ironically so. Yeah. So, more parts of the sex ed mandate require schools to teach about abortion as one of the options for pregnancy. Okay. And then students will be taught how to obtain contraception or an abortion without parental consent. There's a law that's being promoted right now that's going to drop the age of consent from 18 to 16. And it's also going to change who can give consent. So Uncle Joe could give consent. Your psychiatrist, your guidance counselor could give consent. So basically trying to take mom and dad completely, out of the picture. So not only dropping the age, but increasing those who can give consent. The State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE, is given authority to implement, administer, and ensure compliance with the sex ed mandate. So no more local control, okay? So trying to make this a state-run mandate as opposed to letting your local school committee come in and run the show. This is the movie I was talking about that you can find on YouTube, but it's called Love Is All You Need, and here's the main actor, and you can see hetero, and of course the cut lip because she's being bullied for being a heterosexual in society and in her school. Very, very sad. It's about a 16-minute movie that you can watch. But I think all parents should really take the time to, especially if your kids are in school, watch this. Take the 16 minutes to watch this on YouTube, because you need to know what your kids are being shown.
I didn't even know what the words hetero or homosexual meant at that age.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I was the same
What
way.
is that?
I was the same way. Absolutely. Yeah. Oops. All right, so now we're on to the bathroom bill here. And I'm sure many of you, if not all of you, have heard of this in the news. What is gender identity? According to Massachusetts law, gender identity shall mean a person's gender-related identity, appearance, or behavior, whether or not that gender-related identity, appearance, or behavior is different from that traditionally associated with the person's physiology or assigned sex at birth. So basically saying, however you think, you are, you are. Okay, and that's part of our Mass law.
Why do kids have to discuss this at all at that age?
It's a great question. It's all part of an agenda. It's all part of an agenda.
So all kids are discussing these issues at that young age. It's brought up.
In preschool, they're teaching the purple unicorn. Okay, preschool, and that is personal knowledge that I got from a man that actually teaches in the preschool in Massachusetts. So it was firsthand knowledge. So may be shown by what is gender identity? Medical history, care, or treatment of the gender-related identity. Okay, consistent and uniform assertion of the gender-related identity, or any other evidence that the gender-related identity is sincerely held as part of a person's core identity. So basically, it's a sincerely held belief. Okay? This is for our Spanish audience on YouTube. As for our Spanish audience on Facebook. All right. Keep MA safe. You might see this around Facebook, get emails perhaps, but this is the campaign to repeal the bathroom, and we call it the locker room law. Okay, so back in the summer of 2016, we gotten enough signatures. We had to get 33,000 certified signatures. We got 34,000 certified signatures in order to get the question on the ballot in 2018. So for all of you listening online and on YouTube, we need your help to educate people. So in 2018, when we go to vote for Governor Baker and Senator Warren, you also are going to have a chance to vote for the repeal of the bathroom law. So we hope that you will vote to repeal this law. And people need to know that, and I'll get more into this, there were 36 amendments that were offered on this law, none of which were passed. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through here. But just to give you a little history, July 8th, Governor Baker signs the bathroom law. We need to do a direct repeal, different provision. There was a 90-day window that opened. We actually only had about 50 days to get the signatures. We needed 33,000. There were some challenges with it being fall of 2016 rather than an off year. It was a presidential year. Difficult, but it worked. And thank you to everyone that helped. So as I mentioned, we had 34,000 certified signatures. So what is the law? Bans discrimination against gender identity in places of public accommodation. And public accommodation before December 14th included churches, as we talked about. But public accommodation today includes your local gym. So if you're a 30-year-old woman that goes and showers after working out in your local gym, and in walks a man identifying as a female, well, that's completely legal. And if you're going to be, bothered by that, or you're asked to just kind of remove yourself or deal with it, and if you end up discriminating, you can still come under fines and penalties. Restrooms, locker rooms, gyms, changing areas. Let's see, gender identity, poorly defined, again, sincerely held belief on that given day, regardless of appearance or anatomy, and it's fluid. It can change on a whim. So one day you could be male, another day you could be female. How do you tell who is sincere and who is abusing the law? All right, we always made the argument this is also a slippery slope for sexual abuse, the predators that want to come in, and it's an easier entrance now because cops don't want to be found discriminating. So they might be a little more hesitant to go into a situation because they don't want to come under fines and penalties. And actually, one of the amendments, one of the 36, was to protect cops. But that amendment was not even narrowly defeated. It was big majorities were defeating that particular amendment. Bathroom law contents, again, special rights for men in women's spaces. Men can loiter. We cannot ask them to leave. Standard, can look all day but don't touch. Can question, are you in the correct place? Have to take his word for it or you're in violation. There was a story in TJ Maxx, you might have seen this in the news in Plainville, where a woman was filmed in the restroom. She asked the staff to call the police. Said no store policy. So he was in the restroom for over 30 minutes and the staff could do nothing, and he may have taped multiple women. Okay? So people's hands are tied. So we're not only dealing with a PC culture, we're also dealing with a law that makes it a lot more difficult to do anything. And then these are just some of the amendments. Sean O'Connell, who many of you may know, to prohibit level 2 and 3 sex offenders trying to take advantage of the law, have greater scrutiny. Mark Lombardo had one to protect the police. Jim Lyons had one to allow parents to protect their kids. So say, my 8-year-old daughter was in the bathroom, I was concerned that a man walked in there, to protect parents, that they wouldn't be fined for discrimination, but none of these amendments were passed. And then this just goes over some of the penalties that we talked about, up to a year in jail, $50,000 fine, and some others here. So where we stand right now, again, mainly I'll just point out that it's on the ballot in 2018, and we hope that people will educate people that it's coming up and tell them how to vote to repeal the law. Because, as I mentioned, it's an extreme law that there were 36 amendments and none of them were passed. This is just a story. This was a man identifying as a woman, went into a Boston women's shelter. The cops came in and drug him out. He sued the city of Boston, and he won $20,000 for entering a women's shelter. Would this not set a precedent for other men that may want to go into a women's shelter?
This must have been just recently then.
Yeah, this is within the past couple of years, I want to say. The list of public accommodations, nursing homes, okay, dressing rooms, shelters. The only thing that's not on this anymore is churches, of course, but the rest of these remain as public accommodations. So we do hope, this is where we spend a lot of our time at the State House, and what we want to do through this book called Engage the Bay State is to educate people to understand the issues and then come down with us to the State House. Last summer there were 300 of us down at the State House rallying against the bathroom bill. They told us we were the second largest group to come down to the State House in the 2-year legislative session. Imagine if there were 500 of us, we probably would have been the largest group. So sometimes we think, what's that tipping point? We think maybe 2,000, 3,000, well it could be about 1,000 people to go down to the State House and rally. So it doesn't take a lot to have an effect. And this is just a picture of us. These are a lot of your senators and representatives in the center there in their suits arguing for the bathroom bill at this particular hearing. And then these are just some examples of pastors that showed up to give their testimony about why they were concerned about the bathroom bill in particular. And then just some scripture that we can look back to here in the Old Testament, some examples of people that looked at some of the laws of the day and were asked to do certain things that they did not feel were right. Here's the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego not bowing down to the idol. Daniel told not to pray, but continued to pray. Here we see, blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. There's going to be a level of persecution when you stand up for things that are right and things that go against our culture. Here we see the apostles in Acts saying we must obey God rather than men. At a certain point you cannot let the culture keep going down a road that is a dangerous one for the culture. So lastly, here's just a picture of us rallying at the State House. This is the 300 of us right outside the House of Representatives when it came to the bathroom bill. And then we formed a circle of prayer, praying for our representatives and our senators to make the right decision in regard to this bill. And then you can see here, where are we now? House roll calls. You can see how the House of Representatives voted on the bathroom bill, 36 to 116. You can see how they voted a pay raise for themselves here, 44 to 116. Defunding Planned Parenthood, again, the 40 is to defund it, the 117 of course is not, and then the Senate follows in line too. So a lot of our representatives and senators are just rubber stamps for House and Senate leadership. And then real quick, we're doing a Stop Taxpayer Funded Abortion petition this summer that we hope you'll be a part of, and you can find out more about this at mafamily.org on our website. And again, we believe at Mass Family that we must obey God and His Word rather than men, that God's Word stands forever and man's laws, they don't. And they come from a human perspective, and we believe we'd rather have laws that come from a biblical perspective. And then lastly, this just talks about our Engage the Bay State curriculum again. We can't talk about this enough in the sense of this is our handbook for every church. We hope every church will lead a small group or Sunday school class, every home, perhaps even with your kids at home to teach this book to them. It tells you all the things that are going on that we believe are a concern to the family when it comes to the laws that are being passed at the State House and the curriculums that are being taught in our public schools. So lastly, will you partner with us? The main way you can partner with us is to teach this book and get a copy for yourself. Again, it can be ordered at mafamily.org/engage. And there's really nothing like this that we know of in any of the 40 states that have an institute. The Mass Family has really taken the lead to put in layman's terms a book that explains to you the laws and the curriculums in your public school. Plus there's a video that goes with each chapter that further explains the chapter as well. So that's it for what I had tonight. If you guys have any questions,
Let's give Mike a good hand.
A lot.
Thank you.